Today's, I've already forgotten, it's July something.
12th.
12th, yeah, there you go. And this is nonsense and AI robot. Mostly nonsense.
And AI, you remember when OpenAI had the big coup? Because a lot of people were like, hey, we shouldn't be moving in this direction. And Microsoft was like, we want to run the board. Well, apparently we're going to skip that whole step this time.
Phil Schiller to join OpenAI board in observer role following Apple's ChatGPT deal. And a story that sounds like nonsense, but is actually in the AI robot section. You see, Microsoft gave, what was it, $15 billion? And Apple just said, we'd like to be a part of this. We like what's going on here. And OpenAI said, oh, yeah, okay, sounds good. There was no money that changed hands.
We'll let you into the garden.
Yeah.
That's the trade-off.
And Microsoft's role is also an observer role. So you think Microsoft and Phil Schiller, when they don't agree on something, they're going to like rock, paper, scissors to see who gets to go to talk?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that either of them are observer roles. It will be interesting to see who gets if they disagree, how that plays out. I'm sure we'll hear about that.
We should make a parody skit of this with like, one of those reality TV romance shows where like they hand you the rose and it's like the OpenAI board has handed Phil Schiller the rose.
The Bachelor.
Yeah.
The board member. The director. And when it comes to another thing, they told us that AI wasn't going to take jobs. Then a smaller lie, they told us that AI was not going to completely disrupt education.
ChatGPT outperforms undergrads in intro-level courses, but falls short later. Software that promises to detect AI-produced text fails to deliver. Yup.
So they did not tell anybody they were doing this, but they got approval from the university, and they ran it through. It was like a psychology course, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the answers were open text format. And ChatGPT aced the first 2 years of school, struggled with the second two a little. But no one was able to catch that was actually AI taking the course. So if you want to cheat, college students, God, what's that going to look like when all of our labor coming out has just been cheating their way through the entire time? And then not only did they cheat to get through, but if they didn't cheat, they fell behind. So everybody has to cheat.
It's kind of wild because it already feels like, is our undergrads learning? It already feels like that.
A lot of people in the Twitch chat, when I bring up these ideas, they'll say something like, hey, I work with these young kids and they don't know what a file system is. They don't know how to open any kind of computer device. They've only ever had Apple or whatever, tablets. And they've gotten through these educations somehow with all of that.
Maybe in the smoldering ashes of what remains, we'll build a new education system that actually values failure and learning from failure. Because like smart people learning from failure is the best way.
Well, I think with the coming political environment that we're about to see in the next year, we're going to get the vouchers. So private schools, maybe we start a Level 1 academy. Get those vouchers. The other thing is how often we're seeing new models. I think I agree with you now. In fact, I've canceled my ChatGPT because they give it to you for free now, right?
They give you the older versions for free.
I'm rolling with Claude. No, you can get the newest ChatGPT.
You get 4.0?
It's low limit, but everybody's using the same model now, even the free users. You have to register. But I'm with Claude now.
Yeah, Claude's really come a long way.
I'm rolling with Claude. Yeah. But maybe I got to switch back. Coming soon.
OpenAI CEO Sam Altman anticipates GPT-5 as a significant leap forward over GPT-4, which occasionally, quote unquote, goes off the rails with mistakes even a 6-year-old wouldn't make. How they're doing that is with an agent of agents, where an agent is going to look at what the output is and say, this doesn't make sense, or this is actually okay. And the first place they're doing that is with code. When you ask OpenAI, ChatGPT for help with code, that's the easiest place to start.
It's kind of slightly cathartic to know that when I complain to ChatGPT that's making really stupid mistakes, that's probably triggering an internal audit. And it used to be that a human being would go and look and why it made those stupid mistakes, but not anymore.
OpenAI unveils CriticGPT, a game changer for AI code error detection. So basically, when the first language model comes up with code, another language model is looking at the code that it generated to see if it contains obvious errors. And if it does, it'll correct them.
Once again, it's just another AI added to the stack. When do we stop that? Does that just go on forever?
No, I think that like what Stephen Wolfram, the Mathematica guy, did with his thing, Wolfram Alpha, I think that that's what we're going to have. It's not going to be general artificial intelligence, not really. But when you ask it the question, it's going to be like, oh, this is a this type of question. Oh, this is a that type of question. Oh, you're trying to trick me into playing rock, paper, scissors, and I'm going to give you a reasonable, answer for you trying to trick me into playing rock, paper, scissors instead of earnestly trying to feed rock, paper, scissors to a large language model, which does not work at all. And so it'll look like the thing is like thinking and is independent when really it's just a system of it's like, oh, this looks like a math problem. Let me ask Wolfram Alpha.
Well, you're still going to need copious amounts of training data, and that's the next battleground, right? What is allowed and what is not allowed for these machines to go and just gobble up and reproduce and steal? And the Microsoft AI CEO has said the quiet part out loud. I'm sure that he regrets this.
Microsoft AI CEO, content on the open web is freeware for AI training. And under U.S. copyright law, he's not wrong. Morally, he shouldn't be doing that at the head of a $1 trillion company. But a $1 trillion company is not required to be moral. They're only required to comply with the law.
For now. Unfortunately, those laws ain't going to change anytime soon. Because back to the whole Chevron coming political wind change, which I'm not against it, but I see the problems that it's going to cause. I see some of them. I'm sure some will be blindsides. And here's a crazy one. A partnership between who? What?
Apple will reportedly announce a partnership with Google at an iPhone 16 event. Gemini. It's like, oh, we see Gemini may be a good fit for iPhone.
It's interesting that they got that board seat on OpenAI, and you were thinking like, oh, okay, they're giving them the partnership. They're tying themselves into this. They're hitching themselves to this wagon. But then the next week they were like, nah, we're looking at all the AIs.
It's kind of wild that we have companies that have the hubris to think that they can survive Apple's wily ways, because Apple is very handsy, very possessive, and Apple sins boldly and no one stops them.
That's like, going back into a domestic abuse situation. It's like, he's different. He's changed. He's going to quit drinking.
I mean, the hardware companies are all like that. And it's wild, too, that Apple's become such a bully in the hardware space. It's like, I just want, this certain kind of power transistor because it's what the iPhone uses. And the companies that make like a power transistor are like, oh, I'm sorry, Apple buys that particular power transistor. We can't sell it to people that aren't Apple because that would endanger our Apple contracts. And that is a wild situation to be in.
Walmart.
Yeah.
Walmart perfected that whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of thing that the FTC should expose to sunlight and kill with fire.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying, but it's an environment where these companies are in control.
Apple has no interest in dictating who the customers are of the company that makes their LCD screens or their buttons or their housing or whatever. As long as it's not sold as genuine Apple compatible replacement, whatever company, whatever optronics company came up with it, good on them for inventing a product that Apple wants. They should be able to sell that in the open market. But as a practical matter, they're unable to do so.
Well, you say they have no interest, but they do have an interest because it's monopoly.
An anti-capitalistic
interest. Yeah, well, I'm saying, but they're doing it.
That's un-American.
What is American now? What can we really claim as American at this point? Is American worldwide? If you go to the average world citizen and you say, do you think this behavior is un-American? They'd be like, no, it's exactly what America does.
The most American behavior is an obese man eating a Snickers bar while wearing a red hat and having an American flag in his backpack.
And running a monopolistic company. And the other thing that AI companies are going to try to convince you is that now they're taking it serious, the whole like respecting your content. And, we see stuff from like Adobe and all these companies are like, no, we're doing everything we can. That is a lie.
AI trains on kids' photos even when parents use strict privacy settings. Even unlisted YouTube videos are used to train AI, a watchdog has warned. So, yeah, but I mean, this article is a little bit clickbait, but it's basically anything that you feed to the cloud is going into a data set, period.
So they looked at some Australian kids, and they looked at the data sets, and they found some kids who They found the original picture, but it was like only just some obscure social media account. It hadn't been posted on a major website. It was clearly a private video for their friends and family. AI found it, and AI used it.
Just like the guy from Microsoft said. So it's not just the guy at Microsoft that's doing that. It's literally every company.
For sure. He's just dumb enough to say it. And the AI stuff in design is really impressive, but in the design world, there's less stuff to steal. It's a smaller pool that you're fishing out of, and sometimes that can be blatantly obvious.
Figma disables its AI design feature that appeared to be ripping off Apple's weather app. In the demo, it was, hey, we just need a weather app that looks nice. And it's like, here you go, here's Apple Weather.
The one I read had pictures.
Yeah, I did too. Maybe Apple was like, these are our pictures.
Oh, here we go. It just wasn't loading tweets. So, yeah, the one on the left is what Figma came up with. The ones on the right are actual Apple weather dashboards. Pretty similar.
Well, if that's what Epic Games did, it's no wonder they wouldn't let them go into the EU App Store.
You think Epic Games just used AI to create it?
It's like, let's just do the most low-effort app store ever, and that's what it came up with.
Now, we can see that major universities can't figure out who's AI. Websites can't figure out who's AI. But maybe there are some hints.
New paper counts excess words, the telltale words that could identify generative AI text. Delve is one of them. It had several more in this article.
Yeah, there was some, I can't remember. But they all were like, sounded like a good vocab, unprecedented.
There's also some words that had gone down in usage.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting why they would choose some and not the other.
There's the graph.
Oh, it's so small.
Crucial. That's another one. Crucial had been trending up before AI, but then with AI, it's just taken off.
Oops.
And in a story that we report every week, Google search ranks AI spam above original reporting and news results. Shocking no one that watches this program, because we've been complaining about this for years.
I think Wired did a previous story about this, right? Although this one's new, it's July 2nd. But they were like, hey, let me search literally my work. And he found a spam site that had just reproduced his work.
Yeah.
And now, to be fair, it's time to plug into a Wired subscription. That creates the cottage industry of reproducing your work. Just understand, it's not a perfect world. You need to make money. But I'm just telling you, when I see that, I go find an alternative, and it's easy to find.
And now it is a push button to have an AI rewrite your article, which under current copyright law, completely fine. Not ethically fine, but under the law, fine.
And I got to say, I feel like how have we not moved on past, we should be bagging our own groceries. It's pointless to have another human being in that equation, but they insist upon it, except now it won't be a human being.
MIT's soft robotic system is designed to pack groceries. Each robot will cost $4 million. It'll pay for itself in just shy of 22 years.
You can see it's, the grapes there. It doesn't smush them. They also say that it has vision systems to decide like, oh, these are grapes. They need to be sorted into this bag, but not on the bottom, with nothing heavy on top of them, which current baggers cannot do or won't.
Too much meth.
You would think that would make them more efficient, right? Repetitive tasks. And self-driving cars, they don't have a great track record. It seems like, just early this year, they had all kinds of horrible headlines, but we're going forward anyway. Now there's a new one.
Yet another self-driving car company will use Austin as its testing grounds.
Start with a Z, right? What is it? Zoox or something like that? Yeah, Zoox. It's not a good name.
No.
Their cars are a little more flashy. They got the gradient in the back. They said they picked Austin because it's got a good grid of streets and also epic storms that they wanted to learn how the cars would behave in those storms, which means that they don't know. And they're willing to let the Austins deal with that. Austinians?
Fun times.
Austinites. And giant robots, we've always wanted them. We assumed that they would be just for space combat. This one has a much more mundane job.
Japan introduces enormous humanoid robot to maintain the train lines. 12-meter high machine. It's Coke bottle eyes and a Wall-E-like head, and it's going to go maintain the train lines.
Painting and removing greenery are going to be its two first jobs.
Also inspection.
So that'll be fun to watch. And here is our, I guess, dystopia of the week, right?
Yeah.
We learned that brain organelles can be used like computers, so obviously this is where that ends.
Brain in a jar biocomputers can now learn to control robots, finally completing the prophecy as shown to us in the Fallout universe.
This is a mock-up. This doesn't really exist, but you can imagine it'll probably look something like that. I don't think it actually looks like a human brain when they make them.
No, the lab version of this was just a small cluster, an organelle of neurons, and they survive for about 4 days before they die.
Yeah, but we can always just put a new one in there.
Yeah, well, then you have to teach the new one, and it's not fabulous.
We'll teach them in simulation from the old one.
I'm pretty sure that was a Black Mirror episode where it's like the world's most gifted person for X was condemned to live a hell where they just lived thousands upon thousands of years, and they just made multiple copies of that person's brain, which was then, inside this other system that was designed not to let the outside world know that person's consciousness was inside the chip.
It's all coming true. That show was very prophetic. Not quite as prophetic as Idiocracy, but getting up there. And if you are living in Austin or San Francisco or any of the places where robotic cars are operational, you might need a new leg soon. And there's some really good news.
People can now move their bionic legs just by thinking about it. It's a mind-controlled prosthetic. It doesn't require a Neuralink style implant, but it does require some creative wiring.
But amazingly, this is twofold. They attach physically to your existing muscles, so you're actually moving your leg muscles to trigger it. But then they have a sensory nerve part, which reads more fine-grained control.
Yeah.
And your muscles don't atrophy because you're using them. That's going to be wild. And this, I'm sorry that Chris is not here because this was her big prediction. It's like, this is going to happen, and it finally happened.
Florida man, yes, in that context, has been arrested after shooting and destroying a Walmart delivery drone, deputies say. This was flying over his property. He thought it was spying on him or something. Turns out it was just Walmart delivery drone. Oops.
I mean, it was probably spying, let's be fair. If the FedEx trucks are spying, what do you think the drones are doing?
Yeah.
But it wasn't specifically spying on him. They were actually testing it to see how well it could do. So there was an operator who was there and looked over and it was like, you just shot the drone. And they brought it home. He only hit the delivery portion, not the drone itself. So it was able to get back home. And he's going to be doing some time. And China had a terrible accident.
Chinese rocket static fire test results in unintended launch and a huge explosion. I thought you covered this last week. The headline was amazing. Was it the hills are alive with the smell of rocket fuel?
Wasn't that a different one?
Was it?
June 30. June 30 was Sunday? I think this happened on Saturday, right?
Well, you've already used up the most amazing headline for this that would have fit this story.
Yeah, Sunday, June 30, with the time change. Yeah, but this wasn't the same one. It's a different one. They apparently forgot to put locks on it.
Oops. Happens sometimes. They're under a lot of stress.
I'm sure.
It is very stressful, not unlike rocket surgery is, in general.
You know what else is stressful? Being on the International Space Station right now, because you don't know if you can come home. You have to come home in a Boeing. Oh, God. And apparently the suits are very uncomfortable.
NASA's commercial spacesuit program just hit a major snag because it's not very comfortable.
And the company that decided to make them said, hey, there's no chance we can make these for anywhere near the price we quoted them to you. So much so that we're just going to quit.
Is this going to be another one where Elon Musk steps in with his...
It is, and that's a beautiful lead-in.
SpaceX wants to launch up to 120 times a year from Florida, and competitors aren't happy about it. Because somebody made a web animation of how many, the years, the last 5 years, launches from Elon Musk facilities, and it is impressive the number of rockets that dude is launching.
But he doesn't have his own launch facilities. He's still using the NASA facilities, of which there are 2 to launch rockets from. But if he's doing that 120 times a year, there's not a lot of room for other people to do it. Because it's not like you just move them in and launch them that day. It takes time to set them up.
He's got a few bucks. Just build another launch facility.
Well, that's not as cost effective, though, right? So specifically, Bezos was like, hey, when are my rockets going to be able to be launched? You can't take up the whole schedule. And NASA's like, he pays on time.
He pays on time, and he actually has some stuff to put here. Ooh, burns.
And we're desperate for him to rescue the astronauts. And here is moving on to nonsense. And this is just a tragedy made most tragic by the fact that no one is talking about pulling this drug.
Yeah.
This must go forward.
Alzheimer's scientist indicted for allegedly falsifying data in a $16 million scheme. So this is a trial, a drug trial for Alzheimer's, and the results were apparently falsified.
Everything about it was built on sand, but we're still going to use it. They brought it up to him, and they were like, well, that was the early trials. It's changed so much since then.
You could copy-paste the Alzheimer's data here for Brondo, and it would be scary close to idiocracy.
There's another thing you could copy-paste it to that we can't talk about. But here's something that I do a lot of, and I don't know what to do. What can we do here?
Yeah.
We're doomed.
Drinking from plastic bottles can raise type 2 diabetes risk, study warns. And I was very skeptical when I read this headline. It's like, how did they do this? And it's like, they gave people a pretty small dose of BPA. There was a control group that didn't get anything, and then there was another group that got a daily dose of BPA plastic. And holy crap, this study wasn't very long at all. Almost immediately, their insulin resistance in the other group rose significantly, which is, diabetes. That's incredible.
And that amount was within the legal limits of what they can put into plastic.
Yeah. Could the obesity epidemic be because everybody is insulin resistant and everybody's hungry all the time?
That would benefit a lot of people, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Except for the consumer level. Everybody above that, it's all down the chain.
It's like, dear rich people, only use metal and glass cookware. Can do.
But not really. And if you drink the tap water, it's being filtered through plastic. I've learned that.
I wonder how many microplastics come from PECs.
Well, you're going to be doing are you flying next week?
Yeah.
So you could put this into, I cannot see you doing this.
No.
Have you ever considered the dopamine fasting?
I've tried that a little bit, yeah. And I can't.
Well, it's a new trend.
Inflight, word that I probably can't say because the algorithm just doesn't understand the bizarre new trend in travel that is creating a buzz. And it's on a flight, and it's a term that has not historically been used in the flight of somebody, in the context of somebody on a flight. But it means that you go onto a flight, and because it is such a miserable experience, instead of trying to use the in-flight entertainment or watching a movie or listening to something on headphones, you just stare off into space. Because what else are you going to do?
I would think that maybe the best way to use that time would be try to skill up, right?
Yeah.
Learn a new thing.
Yeah, I literally cannot do that. Usually the airline stuff is so cramped that I can't really even use a computer or anything either. The best I can do is listen to an audiobook or maybe possibly watch something but then it hurts after a little while. So audiobook's basically all I can do.
Clearly what you need is an Apple VR headset.
I actually, not an Apple VR headset, but there is a headset that is like the equivalent of 3 1080p displays, and it's like, that might actually be good for travel.
Well, this is something that we've talked about before. I don't remember where we learned about this, but I remember going down this rabbit hole, and it is a nasty, nasty thing that they've been feeding to us for quite some time, but not anymore.
The FDA is going to ban an additive used in sodas due to health concerns. That's brominated vegetable oil. That's been banned in Europe for a long time, which this article doesn't mention at all because it is a terrible article. But basically, brominated vegetable oil has been banned basically pretty much everywhere except the United States.
We're always the last, right? So if you drink citrus drinks, that's where you're getting your brominated vegetable oil. It keeps citrus drinks from separating as they naturally would. Because everything about modern food is to
No more
fight
of that
nature.
for me. Literally, all I drink anymore is tea, coffee, and water.
I had a Mountain Dew last week. Actually, I had a Mountain Dew on the 3rd. But no more brominated vegetable oil.
I've gotten to the point where I can have onion rings, and that just makes me so happy.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's vegetable oil they're frying those in, huh?
Yeah.
I do love onion rings. How about ramen? Can you have ramen?
Yeah.
Well, then you'd be well equipped to go mountain climbing in Korea.
Leftover ramen noodles broth is causing problems on South Korea's Mount Hala. Basically, when people get done with the noodles, they just dump the water out, but the water's salty. And if you ever heard the phrase, it's like, oh, they were so angry, they burned the crops and they salted the earth so nothing would ever grow again. That's literally what's happening.
So how much could they really be pouring out? They estimate that it's between 26 and 31 gallons
A day.
of broth.
A day.
That's a lot of salt.
It's madness.
Plus that ramen flavoring is just an insane amount of sodium.
Yeah.
Staggering amount. And maybe, you know what? One way that you could get away from the salt content is to not eat salty noodles, but instead sugary noodles.
Neeson's Campfire S'mores cup noodles is an ode to summer. A disgusting, awful ode to summer.
I bet it still has salt in it though, right?
Yeah, it's got to. I'm surprised at how, like, the cheap chocolate is also really insanely salty. There's very little milk in it. It's all just random crap. It's wax and sugar.
Salt tastes good with sugar. That's something they've learned. And I don't know what to eat or drink. All the foods are killing me. The water is giving me diabetes. But I do know some things that you should not drink. And that is random bottles you find at sea.
4 have died after drinking from bottles that were found randomly at the sea. 2 others are in critical condition. There's an unidentified substance that they drank because it smelled vaguely like alcohol.
That's a man who really wants a drink.
That was in those were fishermen in Sri Lanka.
You get thirsty out there fishing.
Or just bored. It's like, oh, we found a bottle. Let's see what happens. Thankfully, my misery is at an end.
Well, I think it was a rough trip from
Yeah.
bottle to the end. Sounded pretty nasty. And here is a utopian article. I can't see that we ever reach this. And as good as it sounds, remember when you see headlines like this, you must ask yourself, who decides? In this case, who decides what the truth is?
Welsh Government to ban politicians from lying. It sounds good in theory. I could get behind it. But what if a politician says the speed of light is this? So, well, that's true. That's the speed of light in space. But what about the speed of light in water? It's not the same.
But in almost every aspect of politics now, we have two sides offering truth that is contradictory. So someone has to play judge there. Who gets to be the judge? I mean, we're already having a lot of controversy with our highest judges right now, right?
I would like some level of this where, like basic definitions are satisfied. It's like, this was, red, and it was not red at all. That the red wavelengths were just not even part of it.
Would you say that we could boil it down to just basic biology?
No.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. You were never a big Zelda fan, right?
Not a huge Zelda fan, but, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I had some fun with them for sure. I don't know that I would go this far, but I also don't know that this is something that government should be focused on.
Anthony Bray has been sentenced to 4 months for possession of a replica Master Sword, which was 6 inches long and from the Zelda video game series. And this is a crime against humanity. This person should not, at worst, this should be, don't do it again. But they said this could be used as a weapon, and it's only 6 inches long, and you're not allowed to have, something like this in the UK, I guess.
If the whole thing is 6 inches, then the little handle is like,
Yeah.
it's
It's
ridiculous.
like a letter opener or something. It's like, oh, this is a sheathed weapon. No, it's not. This is worse than the potato peeler. This is, again, 4 months for this. This is very disruptive to this individual's life. I'm sure they're probably just a nerd that had no idea what was going on. And just, why? This is not cool.
Now, have you, your entire life, I hope that you have had the correct outlook on knowing that you are privileged and that you should suffer for that.
Oh,
because genetically, you've been gifted with extreme height, and that makes you a monster.
Vietnam. The headline is Vietnam, outrage at student height requirement. Too short to study? Students can revise. I can't even read it. Yeah, so.
It's not well written. AI generated. But yeah, there's a certain program. What was it, like business, some kind of business thing?
You have to be tall.
You have to be 1.58 meters tall for a male and 1.65 meters tall for a female, or they're not even going to take you. And they point out that in Vietnam, height and like income and a lot of stuff has correlations.
Yeah. I thought this was going to be like for an academic program for basketball or something. Like, oh, for us to consider you for the basketball scholarship, you have to be 168 centimeters tall. But no, it was the business program.
Have you felt like you've had now you mentioned the plane seats. There's
Suffering.
a disadvantage.
Yeah, a lot of suffering.
The one time you got in the Corvette, you're just stuffed in there.
I've got a picture of me in the DeLorean, and I never realized that apparently Christopher Lloyd and
Michael J. Fox
were just tiny human beings.
Michael J. Fox was a very tiny human being.
It's like, oh, the DeLorean. The DeLorean is impractically small.
That was kind of part of the story of Teen Wolf, if you remember. Like, he was way too small to play basketball until he became a werewolf. And when you have a disagreement with somebody, there's adult ways to resolve it, and there's childish ways to resolve it. Throwing spiders, clearly in the second column.
Minnesota County Board candidate who allegedly threw a live tarantula at tenant is charged with assault.
It's a very interesting story.
The quotes don't even make any sense. It's like, oh, I saw it at Home Alone, so I got a tarantula. It's like, but a tarantula is harmless.
This is the spider thrower. And she was renting a room to someone else, but also running for office. And I got the impression that the person renting the room politically hated her. And so was trying to use the being in the basement as like an attack vector. And this woman wanted her out, but clearly wasn't willing to go through the proper channels for that. So she claims she bought the tarantula and nudged it down the stairs. The victim claims the tarantula was thrown.
What an amazing way to resolve your disputes.
But the real loser here, the tarantula.
Yeah.
That's unsafe for the tarantula, no matter how you slice it. Now, if you were going to smuggle drugs, what would be your way to disguise them? Like peanut butter jar, to me, sounds like a good one, right? Reseal it.
Yeah.
They're onto that, though.
I don't know. I'd have to give it some thought. Maybe like cinder blocks or something.
You could probably use some kind of technology, and then you could give them your backstory. It's like, I'm traveling with this because of that. I don't know if it would save you. But again, here's a pretty good idea. It didn't work.
Drugs disguised as Taco Bell burritos found during Tennessee traffic stop. Yeah, the imaging devices are much higher resolution than that. So
you can see how they're roughly burrito shaped in their packaging. So they got Taco Bell wrappers and wrapped everything up. But it does raise the question, is like, why do you have 40 burritos? I guess you could say that you're catering. This harkens back to, remember when, Cop Killer, Ice-T. There was the big controversy. Should rap lyrics be censored at all? But this adds another layer to it.
Or admissible as evidence. Rapper BG ordered to have all future songs approved by the U.S. government. And it goes beyond that, actually. There seem to be some components of this for association. They don't want him to associate with convicted felons or other scofflaws.
But this is probation.
Yeah.
So he did agree to exchange jail time for this monitoring. Now, I'm of the opinion, I don't know how bad jail is. I've never been there. I'm sure it's terrible. But it seems like if you could tough it out another year or two, it's way better to come out with a clean slate. Because the probation system is insane. They will get you back in.
I guess what if the probation was only like 6 months or a year longer than whatever the sentence would have been?
That's never. He's on. It's like 10 years.
Ooh.
Yeah, they give you a long. They want to keep churning you in that system. That also generates money.
Yeah.
Because you have to pay certain fees and everything. But he did agree not to associate with other felons, and they pointed out that every other rapper on this show was a convicted felon. And all of his songs are about things that they're saying he's not allowed to talk about, even though he recorded them previously. And live streaming, it's a little out of hand, and there's one kind of content that people will always come back to. You know, we do the Twitch stories, whatever, but you have to figure out when it's appropriate.
Thai teacher caught live streaming when she was teaching and should not have been live streaming. And it was definitely a themed live stream for a certain kind of audience, and not fabulous.
I think you have to simulate those, right?
Yeah.
If you want to do that kind of material, it has to be in a simulated environment. No children.
Also kind of dark, you know.
Also,
what if the children notice?
Also not that revealing, right?
Yeah.
Like there was no nudity here.
Yeah.
Just, I guess the taboo of it is what attracts you. And if you're going to do a little, maybe you're done with the streamers and you want to do a little IRL dating, there are ways to turn people down that are the right way, and then there's the wrong way.
North Liberty woman arrested for calling police to get out of meeting an online date. And this story just gets weirder and weirder the more you read it. So she called police and she said that the person she was meeting, who she had just met online, was an ex that she was having a baby with. And so they arrested the dude, and they held him for an hour, and he had to share his phone with them to show them that she was crazy. And only when she tripled down did they say, okay, we're going to charge you with filing a false police report, because she said that, you know, he was threatening assault and all this. It was just an escalation. And then when they finally got her to admit she made it all up, they asked her what she was thinking, and she said, oh, I didn't actually expect the police to help, and then I just sort of had to run with it. I was like, I'm pretty sure this was a Seinfeld skit where just like I just had to
the George Costanza escalating lie. Yeah, that was definitely an episode. But he's probably got a civil path there, but I imagine that she has no assets, right?
Yeah.
It's the blood from a stone defense.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Here, now you might think that's one of the worst ways that you could find a date, but no. We're going to show you a much worse one.
Man fined for squirting mixture of urine and flour onto a woman's dress to try to chat her up. And the headline is accurate, and you read it, and it's just you see a sad, lonely individual that just has the wrong idea about everything.
So he would be a law cow if he were in America. He felt that if he sprayed them with this thing, and then he could be like, oh, ma'am, you have something on your dress, that would be the icebreaker. And that would lead to, you know, him being able to talk to them without them thinking that he's a creep, which he clearly is. But apparently he was overwhelmed by his social awkwardness. He sprayed and then just moved on.
And she knew that she was sprayed by that guy.
Yeah. Well, I think they had to go back to the cameras or something, right? They went to his house, and he had other mixtures. He'd been working on different combinations. He had some red dye.
Different formulations.
Amazing. That was in Singapore. And here's an interesting question of like, are we playing God here?
Yes.
I guess we already played God by introducing an invasive species, but now we're just picking winners.
To save spotted owls, U.S. officials plan to kill hundreds of thousands of another owl species that is displacing the spotted owls because they're able to compete more effectively in the Northwest.
I mean, it's just like, we did something dumb. We had unintended consequences. Let's do it all again. For sure, we'll guess it right this time.
The other owls are too big to fail?
I mean, they're not very big.
No.
They're not very successful.
No.
And our final story is another flashback. You would think that some things would be put into place to stop it from happening again. Nope.
Military horses run loose again in central London. I think the BBC is retrying the headline a little bit here because they didn't even bother to run pictures of what happened this time. There's a couple pictures from what happened this time, but all the good pictures were from what happened last time. So they used pictures from what happened, like that one. That picture is from last time. That's not even this time. So this is a little bit of a nothing burger.
Also, the last time those hosts, they were all bloody. It was so epic, and they were like, yeah, we just want to use those again.
I really, going back to the owl story, I really think the correct solution is not to murder the other owls, but to genetically enhance the owls we want to keep so that they're like mutant super owls that will just naturally displace the other owls.
That we can turn them into owl nuggets. That's the ultimate goal, right?
That should be a series on Discovery. That was kind of a joke in Futurama too, is that the owls had become invasive species because we worked so hard to try to protect them.
If any producers or venture capitalists are out there, you're looking for our new Discovery series, Playing God.
Yeah, we're gonna genetically. We found this species of sea squid that we think has some genes that'll really benefit this owl. So we're gonna splice the sea squid genes directly into the owl to make these mutant super owls. These things can eat a bald eagle.
You know what's going to happen though? We're going to get sued for copyright and trademark infringement by Bill Gates.
We had no idea that the owl DNA could combine with mosquito DNA to make the mutant super owls. Who could have guessed? All right, that's enough. That's enough for this week. We'll see you next week. Maybe everything will be back to normal next week. Or not. I don't know.
We'll find out.